Marriage by Compulsion. Gabriel Travis. Chapter 2. At 7:30 in the morning, Krista was already unlocking the door of the small shop on a bustling street in a nearby small town. Without hesitation, she left her father to deal with the guest as best he could. If he intends to invite every scoundrel from his club, then he should work to find a bedroom where the ceiling doesn't leak, the window glass is intact, or the floors aren't caving in. Let him provide the guest with sheets and towels. Prepare breakfast. She, Krista, had made it clear that she wasn't concerned about his guest. She was irritated and full of bad omens, worrying about her father's so-called business with Donahue, which she felt was related to gambling debts. Today was Friday, the only day of the week when Krista and Tonya Clark, the shop's owner, worked together. And as much as she loved her friend, today Krista would have preferred solitude. Tonya designed most of the dresses sold and spent for days a week in her studio or workshop, where 6 women sewed clothes according to her designs. The remaining 2 days, she visited the shop, on Fridays, to conduct inventory of goods and accounts, and on Saturdays, to engage with customers and give Krista a weekend off. Krista was arranging hangers and shelves before opening when Tonya walked in. Her loose red skirt and black blouse, with a tangled mass of golden brown hair, contrasted strikingly with Krista's less vivid but more refined beauty, dressed today in a simple sleeveless linen dress. Beautiful weather, Tonya greeted her. We'll definitely sell some beach outfits today. I love how you've displayed them in the window, dear. Is there coffee? It asked just about ready. Krista smiled and nodded towards the tiny kitchen at the back of the shop. Tonya had been one of Krista's best friends since childhood, but today, after a sleepless night and a clash with the unsympathetic Ross Donahue at 6 in the morning, her boundless energy was hard to bear. The morning went as expected. The hot weather brought demand for light cotton dresses and swimsuits. During a short break, Krista bought groceries for the end of the week. Anger and a sense of foreboding did not leave her. She trusted Ross Donahue not at all, while her father's behavior was becoming increasingly reckless. Krista helplessly speculated about what was happening now at Lydiard Hall. She decided to give her father an ultimatum: either he stops gambling, or she leaves, leaving him to his own devices. Krista was seething with indignation as she placed her purchases in the office, bending to put the meat in the refrigerator. Tonya approached and asked, "What's wrong, dear? You look as gloomy as a cloudy day today." "Really? Sorry." Krista slowly stood up. "Everything is fine," she lied. "Better tell me." Tonya rose from the table, her red skirt swelling to reveal her slender tanned legs. "That's what friends are for, isn't it? Trouble with a man. If only it were that simple." Krista's only problem with men was keeping them at a certain distance. She was too interested in pursuing her career and maintaining her independence. Krista shook her head and forced a smile. "I am not that lucky. It's because of my father, his old tricks again." Krista nodded sadly. There was no point in pretending. All the old families in the county had close ties and knew everything about each other. It was Tonya's mother who had written Krista a letter, advising her to try to win Ambrose Lydiard from his new destructive gambling habit. "If I were in your place, I'd leave him to his own devices," Tonya advised. "You've done all you can, and although I would miss you terribly, you should focus on your career. You were in line for a promotion, weren't you?" It was discussed. Krista put the kettle on the stove. "They'd take me back at my old job if I returned." She already regretted the life she had led before coming to this backwater to help her father. Krista had been a manager as secretary at a successful advertising agency in London, studying management and accounting courses. She returned to the small apartment she shared with another girl from the same company, barely making it back before falling asleep after a long day of intense work and study. But her boss had made it clear that she was in line for promotion once one of the company's employees moved abroad. "Come back. You're wasting your time here. When I offered you this job, I thought you'd quickly set old Ambrose on the right path and leave. The money I pay you is a pittance compared to what you earned in London. And as much as I feel for your father, you can't ruin your life because he refuses to listen to reason." Krista couldn't disagree with her friend's logic, but logic has little to do with love. She knew she couldn't abandon her father, no matter how reckless his behavior might be. "It's like an illness, Tonya. He has lost his willpower, which is why I am trying to help him. He has no one else. He was 40 when I was born, 52 when my mother died 10 years ago. He never recovered from that loss. He loved her so much. But even in the days immediately after her death, he never forgot about me. My father tried to ensure I wasn't depressed and did everything he could for me. That ass, why I can't he just leave him to destroy his life? Ambrose entered the kitchen as she unpacked her purchases. The house seemed deserted, with no sign of Donahue's black car out front. You look tired, kiddo. Had a tough day. Krista wanted to say she was exhausted, not from a tough day but from a tough night spent worrying about his absence. But she bit her tongue. Something was clearly off with her father. He was fumbling around helplessly, his head and hands trembling as he tried to help unpack the purchases. So, what ties you to Donahue? Krista asked directly, wanting to know what was going on. I think it's better if he tells you himself, her father said, avoiding her gaze. He could provide significant help with just a little cooperation from our side. We could see Lydia Hall fully restored and never have financial problems again. What do you say to that? He playfully nudged her, giving her his widest smile. I know he is eager to discuss everything with you personally. So go get dressed in something nice and, for God's sake, be polite to him. Listen to what he has to say. He has the power not only to support us but also to ruin us. Keep that in mind. Tell me what's going on. Krista turned on her heel, chin held high. Support or ruin Donahue? It sounded so incredible that she couldn't believe her father. Why would Donahue spend a large sum to restore Lydia Hall and secure her father's financial future? Ambrose had no property other than a couple of acres in Hertfordshire and a dilapidated old house, which, in Krista's honest opinion, should have been sold for whatever they could get. What business interest could her father possibly have? I'd prefer you to hear it from him. Krista realized she'd get no answers from her father, and she'd have to seek explanations from Donahue himself. Be polite to him, her father repeated this twice. Obviously it was of utmost importance to him. But why? And she certainly wasn't going to dress up for that dandy. Let him see her in everyday clothes. Krista took a shower, put on light jeans and a clean but old black short-sleeved shirt, then went downstairs. Donahue was waiting for her in the hall, sprawled in one of the rickety chairs by the huge empty fireplace. He stood up when he heard her steps. His lazy movements had a feline grace, and Krista felt an inexplicable flutter, her pulse quickening. She had never reacted this way to a man before. Her inner voice warned her to stay alert. And she would. Do you have something to tell me? Krista's voice was tense, her smile politely cold. Yes, Donahue smiled back at her, his smile inviting, perhaps even expressing sympathy for her. But, in the end, he would give her the answers her father had brushed off. I think we should go to the kitchen. I found it to be the most pleasant room in the house. Do you mind? Donahue took Krista by the arm. He was right about the kitchen. Recently, they had been living in this room, warm even on cool nights. Krista had gathered the most respectable furniture from other rooms into it and tried to maintain cleanliness and coziness in at least this one room, which was unachievable in the rest of the house. Now Ross was dressed simply, his worn jeans and white t-shirt highlighting the lean lines of his well-built body. Despite her antipathy, Krista had to admit he was handsome. Embarrassed, she tried not to look at him. Wine, Krista, Donahue offered. His voice was deep and velvety. With your father's permission, he smiled confidently, as if convinced of his own charm. Krista responded coldly, thank you. What was so wrong with finding him physically attractive? She thought, of course, he was handsome, and one couldn't deny it. But that didn't mean Donahue was attractive as a person. Quite the opposite. He poured wine and sat down next to Krista in a relaxed, almost casual pose, one leg crossed over the other. I like how you've decorated this room, said Ross. His gaze slid over the pretty flowered curtains, the comfortable chairs upholstered in the same fabric, the pine cabinets, and small tables, inexpensive items that made the room cozy, an oasis in the neglected, half-empty house. Maybe we should get to the point. You wanted to tell me about the so-called business matters linking you with my father. Her words came out sharper than she intended, with a hint of sarcasm that made them biting. She needed to gain the upper hand. She must. She was irritated but not about to make a mistake in the upcoming conversation. Krista wanted to put this man in his place, to make him understand she wasn't like her father, ready to believe any tall tale. So, this is how Ambrose described the situation and the matter we were discussing. Donahue said with irony, let us get to the heart of the matter, Krista repeated, nervously tapping her fingers on the table. I don't have time to waste on card sharps, Ross finished for her. If you were comfortable with that definition, then yes. She had no reason to change her initial opinion of him. Donahue clearly wasn't a disinterested benefactor. She met his grey eyes challengingly but quickly lowered her gaze and took her wine glass from the table. That's your definition, not mine, he reminded her. And while I can understand that my appearance here at 6 in the morning might have caused confusion, you know I am genuinely invited for a special reason. So, let us get to the business. Donahue stood up from the table, looming over her, and she felt a twinge of anxiety. After standing there for a moment, he moved to the window, looking out at the old, neglected garden. In his posture, Krista sensed tension. Her breath caught as Russ slowly said, "Ambrose lost a very large sum of money last night." So, she was right. It was about gambling debts. Krista felt nauseous. "How much does he owe you?" Donahue turned to her slowly, leaning against the windowsill, watching her intently. Krista couldn't make out his expression against the light. He took a large sip of wine without taking his eyes off her, then spoke slowly, deliberately. "He doesn't owe me anything. He lost a large sum of money to Lesita, the owner of the club where he spent the night. I am in a position to help him to fully pay his debts on certain conditions." Krista's mouth went dry, her heart pounding. Instinctively, she sensed that being indebted to this man was like putting one's head in a noose. The main thing was not to panic. Krista had long persuaded her father to sell Lydiard Hall, to admit he could no longer maintain it, to undertake the necessary repairs. So, they could sell the house, clear the debts, and perhaps even have some money left to buy a small house or apartment. And if not, she would earn enough after her promotion to support both of them. "I can understand your shock, but wouldn't you like to hear my conditions? In exchange for settling your father's debt, I'll take this house, renovate it, allow your father to live here for the rest of his days if he wishes, provide him with acceptable employment. Am I clear, Krista?" She shuddered, lifting her unfocused gaze from the wine she had barely touched, to look at Donahue. Clear? She supposed he was. At first glance, the offer seemed generous. To live and die in the ancestral home was her father's cherished dream. But Krista didn't trust Donahue, and that was evident on her face when she reminded him, "You haven't told me how much my father owes." This could be a small fraction of what they might get selling the house at auction. Most of the estate had been sold off by the time she was born, and the house had begun to fall into disrepair after her mother's death. No, Krista was a modern woman for whom the future meant more than the past. If her father agreed to Donahue's proposal, they would lose everything for the sake of his sentimental dream, whereas if the house was sold, they would have some money left to secure her father's future. "I assume your father should have told you the size of his loss," Donahue responded to her question, walking over to her. "But there's one more condition I must propose." "Go ahead," she said it, knowing it wouldn't affect her already made decision, almost cheerfully, with a touch of bravado. "I am sure you raised smart enough to understand that the deal I propose doesn't require your consent. The property isn't entailed. It hasn't been since your grandfather's time, so everything can be settled between Ambrose and me." However, he paused as if searching for words, which had come easily to him before, and Krista mentally agreed that he could end it there, but this didn't worry her. She knew her father would listen to what she had to say, not just because they were always close, but because he was a traditionalist and considered her a co-owner of the house, so the final word was hers. So, Donahue's statement didn't overly concern her, but his next words shocked her. "The other mandatory condition, you agree to become my wife." Her interlocutor was clearly mad. She could argue long and hard with her father about her solution to the deadlock, but this was too much. Ambrose would never agree to such a deal. Krista started laughing, first softly, then hysterically. Donahue grabbed her hand, pulling her to her feet. He didn't need to slap her to stop the hysteria. His touch was enough to bring her to her senses. "Get out," she shouted, pulling away from him, deliberately rubbing her arm where he had touched her, as if his touch had defiled her. "Don't think this is your final word, Krista. Believe me, it's not." He turned on his heel and left the room. Subscribe to the channel and give a thumbs up.